All right, folks. Hi. Today on this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to go through the steps of making um, your comic portrait assignment. So the first thing is you need to have Photoshop open, and you need to open the photograph that you're going to be working with for this. So we're going to go to File, Open. As always, I'm filming this from home today, so my folders look different than yours, but um, again, you should know how to navigate around in the folders at this point. And this is the image I'm going to be working with today. And Command 0 to zoom in. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is any editing that you want to do to the image. Just basic photo editing that you've been doing. You don't need to go too crazy getting everything super super good looking, because you're going to be sort of drawing on top of this later. But if there's any cropping you'd like to do, that would be a good thing to do. I'm going to crop this down a little bit. And if there's stuff you can't see, maybe you have areas that are very, very dark, you would want to try to adjust to fix those areas. So but if you want to crop, if there's any color or anything adjustments, I'm going to do the levels because I always like to do levels that you want to do. Do what works for your image. I'm going to darken this a few hairs. Okay, that's probably pretty good for what we're getting ready to do. Again, it does not have to be too fancy. I might just see if I can sharpen it a little bit. So do whatever works for your particular image. Don't spend a ton of time on fixing it in Photoshop, but just try to make it look decent if you need to. Okay. All right, that's a little better. I guess a few more details now. I'm going to click OK. So once I've done all of my editing, I'm going to do File, Save As, because I do not want to save over my original. I never save over my original. And I'm going to put this in my desktop. Again, I don't have the art folder at home. It shows up on here, but it won't actually, I can't access it. So I'm going to call this Comic Portrait Photo. Okay. You can leave it as a PSD, but I think it loads a little faster if you save it as a JPEG. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It's up to you. There we go. That's what I'm going to be working with in Illustrator from here on. So did my editing, and now I'm going to open this in Illustrator. I'm going to save this. With JPEGs, you always want to max out the quality. And there you go. Okay, so I can close Photoshop. Well, no, I can't close Photoshop, but I'm going to just minimize it for now. Okay, so now in Illustrator, I'm going to do File, Open, Download. No, it's on my desktop. I want the Comic Portrait Photo image. Click Open. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit. I'm going to fit the artboard. So I'm going to go to Object, Artboards, Fit to Artwork Bounds. Okay, because I only want the one thing. And now I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Comic Portrait Drawing. Okay, this should be a separate file from your photograph. You do not want to save on top of the photograph. I want to make sure this is set as an AI. Down here, the format is Adobe Illustrator, and click Save. And now this is a whole new image. Okay, so let's begin with drawing. What you're going to be doing is drawing on top of the images with lines. There's a couple of ways you can do that, and I'm going to show you both. So the first thing we do is we make a new layer, and then we lock our photo layer. Okay. Now, this layer is going to be our drawing layer. I recommend calling it drawing layer. Okay, drawing layer or just drawing, whatever, but you should specify. It's always good to learn to name your layers. So with our low poly animals, you guys worked with the pen tool a lot. With the low poly animals, you just made straight lines, but this isn't really going to work just for straight lines. Your faces, your portraits have they have curves, so we don't want to just make straight lines. Okay. Remember, with the pen tool, you can make curves. If you prefer the pen tool option to make your curves, that's totally fine. You all practiced with the Bezier game. That was a straight line. You all practiced with the Bezier game, so if you have gotten the hang of this, then go for it. Okay, if you want to use curves, you may use. If you want to use the pen tool, you may use the pen tool. But as we all know, the pen tool can be a little finicky and a little annoying to work with. So I don't like the pen tool. If you want to use it, go for it. If you don't, what I would recommend is the pencil tool. The pencil tool is going to give you much more natural looking lines. So under the shaper tool, I'm going to click this and hold. I don't want to intro to the shaper. I'm going to click the pencil tool. Okay, so let's think of it this way. If I gave you a photograph and a piece of tracing paper and I said, trace this picture, that's basically what I want you to do here in Illustrator. You're going to take your pencil tool and you're just going to trace the shapes you see. Now, this is not easy to do with a mouse. I recommend doing this with a tablet. Go and get the tablets. That's why we have the tablets. So I just drew a line with my pencil tool. A quick thing about the pencil tool. If I draw a line nearby, shortly after I draw that last one, Illustrator thinks I'm trying to correct my previous line. It thinks I'm trying to make an alteration to it if I draw a similar line nearby. So you just have to be careful not to do that. And if you do have a line that's not what you wanted, you can still use the direct selection tool. You used that with your low poly animals to drag the anchors around to close up gaps. You can still use it with the pencil tool. So you pull anchors and to move around the whole line, and then you adjust handles, these are handles, to fit the curves. So down here, if I need to pull this to be a different spot on the side of my face here, I can do that. I always like to zoom in. I think it gives me a more accurate view. I would recommend doing that as well. And just you can go around and fiddle with the lines and get them where you want to. You can always just erase them and try again if that's what you want to do. But do whatever works for you. Okay, so you're going to go around and trace the different parts of the face and hair and eyes and all the details of whatever face you're working on. Okay, I'll show you one other thing when it comes to doing eyes. You don't have to use the pencil tool if you don't want to. If you can see a complete circle for the pupil, you can use one of the shapes. This is under here are all the shapes. There's the rectangle tool, rounded rectangle. Probably won't need any of these, although I could possibly use the rounded rectangle for my glasses. But the ellipse tool is the one you're going to maybe use for circles. So with the ellipse tool will make ovals or ellipses. Okay. If you hold the shift key, though, I'm holding shift right now, it makes perfect circles. So you can kind of make a circle, click it and drag it. I don't want to make it smaller. Click it and drag it into position. Okay. And then I could fill it with black for a pupil. And I can also Do Control C or edit copy, edit paste, Control C, Control V, and Control V. And I can drag this over here so I can make sure the two pupils are the same size. Okay? So I'm going to go around and I'm going to speed things up and I'm going to trace my image here, and then I will show you how to use a few other features. Okay, so I've done a sort of basic tracing, but when I turn off the photo, it looks a little bad. Okay, so let's go over this. If you want to spend a lot of time making super precise lines, you can totally do that. My preference when I do this is to draw the lines and then adjust. That's just how I like to do it. Everyone does things differently. As long as your lines ultimately match up pretty well with your final image, that's fine. But everyone does it their own way. So I'm going to go around and do some adjusting to my lines. You do what works best for you. Occasionally turn off the photo. Here you can see I've got like a line. I've got like a lot more lines than I need. So I'm going to erase some lines. If you need to erase a line, if you select the pen tool and you want the delete anchor point tool, you can delete some lines if you have things that are overlapping that you just plain don't need. Okay, I'm going to go around and make some adjustments to these lines, make things match up a little better, make things look a little better, a little less sloppy and wobbly, and then we'll come back. So, oh, one more. Move this guy. Okay, so I've gone around, I've adjusted my lines, everything's kind of placed a little more accurately now. And we want to start playing around with making this look more like a natural drawing done by hand, not on the computer. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn this off so you can see a little better. Okay, so there's my image, my drawing. I might need to mess around with these glasses a little bit. These got a little squeezed together. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command A to select everything. And what we want to do is change the line shape from uniform to this one that kind of looks like a football. What these do is they take the lines and it's going to make the line, every single line, it's going to make it skinny on the ends and fat in the middle. So you'll see. And I'm going to up the line weight a little bit so you can see it a little better. So what it's doing is all of my lines now look more like a paintbrush stroke or a pencil stroke or a pen stroke, okay, where they are skinny in the ends and fat in the middle. I have to say, I don't like the way this looks for my glasses because glasses are kind of man-made objects. I think that needs to have slightly harder edges. So I'm going to hold shift and select the three parts of my glasses, the two openings and the frames, and I'm going to change those to back to uniform. Okay, I just don't think it looks very good. Okay, so those I'm going to change back to uniform. So it might not look great for some things. It might look great for some things and not for other things. So just use your best judgment, but you should do that a little bit using that curvy stroke. I'll bring this down. Okay. So now, here's the next thing you want to do. You can play around with the widths of the lines even more using the width tool. So this is the width tool. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of looks like an octopus. It's a very odd icon. But what the width tool does is it allows you to change the width of lines. So this is really great for eyebrows, because eyebrows tend to be thicker at one end and fat on the other. So what I'm doing is I click on the line and I drag it outward, and it's going to make it thicker in that spot. Now that looks weird. I'm not going to keep that like that, but I'm going to play around with that width tool. And again, it really does look pretty good with eyebrows, and it sort of auto fills them in for you. There you go. Okay, if I have to use direct selection and do some adjusting to this, I can. This looks strange because I had an extra anchor. I'm actually going to delete an anchor here. Don't want this one. There we go. That looks better. Okay, and I can go back to the width tool and select this. Whoops. And bring it, sort of pinch it back in or adjust it. It's up to you. Fiddle with it however you need it to be. Okay? So I would use that width tool on hair. I think it works real well with hair. I think it works well with eyebrows, as I said. It works well on eyelashes, all that kind of stuff. So play around with that width tool. It's one of the requirements for your project is that you use the width tool. So please, please, please find somewhere to use it on your particular drawing. So let me Command 0 to zoom back out again. I'm going to turn this off. And this looks much more like a drawing that was drawn by hand than it does an image that was drawn on the computer. So once I've got all my line work done, I can begin adding color. Okay, so here's what you're going to do to add color. I'm going to create a new layer. I want to drag it underneath my drawing layer. And I'm going to lock my drawing layer so that I can't mess it up. And now what I'm going to do is I like to use the pen tool for this one. I think it works better because you have to be a little less precise. I'm going to turn my photo back on and I will start clicking. I'm going to swap. Oh, I don't want to be on this layer. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to start clicking around the different colored shapes I see. Now, my head and my neck are all going to be skin color. Ignore shadows for now. Those are going to be eliminated, or we're going to deal with those when it comes time to do the Photoshop. We're going to go back to Photoshop later. So I'm going to go around and select my skin tones. Swap this so you can see what I'm doing. Now you're going to layer your colors in whatever order they need to be so that they all work. So I just did the whole face, but then I'll add the lips layer on top later. So now I need to, and selected my whole face, or use the pen tool around my whole face. I can start to find a color. Now I can click around over here on my color picker if I want to do it that way to find a skin color that looks pretty good. Or I can sample off the photo. Remember, hitting I on your keyboards selects the eyedropper. Now if I sample from over here, I look purple. If I generally want to sample from one of the lighter areas of the skin tone. That's probably a little too light. So you might have to click around to find the right shade. or again, you can sample from the color picker. So up to you what you want to do. Just try to find a color that works. Let's do pink. That looks pretty good. Okay, so remember that this works in layers. So when I go to do the lips, let me open my layers panel. When I do the lips, because I'm doing them after the skin, they are going to show up on top of my skin tone. Guy. Might be okay. I'm using the swatches right now. You can find the swatches. You can go to Window, Swatches, and then if you click this little icon in the corner, you can go to the swatch library, and there's a whole lot of things. There are a lot of swatches. It's up to you what you want to play around with to find something. Okay. I was playing around with the skin tone swatches, but this might be a good situation to go back to my photo layer. Maybe I'll just, if I set this aside, set this to none, and then sample off of it, that might work better. So you got to do, again, just figure out what's going to work for you. Okay. So that's filling in the color. I'm going to go around and fill in the rest of this, and then we'll go over the last step. Okay, now that I have put color everywhere, all I have to do is add a background. So I'm going to make a new layer, call it layer 4, and drag it so it's between the photograph and the color. Go to my rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. And there we go. If there's any places where the color is coming through, make sure you adjust your color layer to hide those things. Again, the photograph can sometimes hide your mistakes, and you have to go back and fix them. Okay, so that's good. I've got everything aligned, everything's covered, and I'm going to do File, Save. And I'll create another tutorial for how to do the very last step working in Photoshop, and so stay tuned for that.